It's the United States of America's 250th birthday, and to celebrate, I'm here to talk about one of the many things I love about my home country: metros. Yes, for a country of our size, wealth, and population, we don't have that many metro systems in our cities, but the ones we have are unique, quirky, and special in their own ways. Some are big, some are small, some are old, some are new, some are game changers for their region, some just couldn't get it going, and some get forgotten entirely. As of last month, I have been on every single one of these marvelous metros, so today I wanted to go over all of them, my experience riding them, and where I would place them on a tier list. Little disclaimer before we start, I'm defining an American metro as— Okay, look guys, I tried to come up with a definition and nothing worked, so I'm just going with Wikipedia's list, plus one metro that I think should be on there and might be a bit of a controversial take. Now for the first metro. The Washington Metro was a big part of my childhood, and indeed the only metro system I rode in the US before graduating high school. From when I was very small, my parents and I would board trains at Bethesda, the closest station to my grandmother's house, and ride into downtown DC to go to the Smithsonian museums. First opened in the bicentennial year of 1976, the Washington Metro is the most used metro system in the US, constructed entirely after World War II, with 6 lines, 98 stations, 129 miles of track, and over 180 million riders in 2025, the second highest in the nation. Because it's so new, the Metro has larger, commuter-focused trains, uniform station design, easy transfer hubs, and higher top speeds. Yet, unlike some of its contemporaries, I think it does a decent job providing local transportation within the nation's capital as well. The Washington Metro is a powerhouse of a system, and proof that metros can still work in the age of the automobile. For that, it's going into the A tier. Chicago was my second US metro, and it was next to nothing like my first. The city's mostly elevated system, or L for short, dates all the way back to 1892, when the first section opened under steam power, and today the L still features distinctive elevated stations, tight turns, unusually small cars, and an iconic downtown loop. I rode the L for the first time in 2017, when I was heading from Midway Airport to Union Station to take the California Zephyr, and while the system has a bit of a learning curve, it gave me great views of the city and a cheap ride into downtown. Over the years, I've explored more of it, often with fellow YouTuber Stormy Cara, and I've gotten to know the system's old stations and unique sections, and learned to tolerate the Blue Line. The L has 8 lines, 146 stations, and 102 miles of track. It saw about 135 million riders in 2025, the third highest nationwide. And while it's old, it's actively being refreshed, with many stations and sections being rebuilt to modern standards. For all of its quirks, the L is the comprehensive network that a big city like Chicago needs. A tier. Just after my California Zephyr trip in 2017, I started undergrad in the Boston area, where I quickly took the opportunity to ride the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority's subway system, known to most as the T. This subway system serves my now home city of Boston, and the towns immediately around it. And while it only has 3 lines that would be considered metros, the red, blue, and orange lines are powerhouses, moving students, workers, and tourists across New England's largest city. The system's downtown tunnels date back to the start of the 20th century, with maze-like stations. But as you go further from the city, you'll encounter segments that were built or rebuilt much more recently. Since each line has unique specs, no equipment is shared between the lines, and each line has cars painted in its respective color. The T has 38 miles of track and 53 stations across its heavy rail lines, and scored about 101 million riders in 2025. For how much it gets done with a relatively small network, it's the tiniest system going in the A tier. And now we get to the big one. The New York subway is synonymous with the city it serves, and is by far the biggest metro system in the US. It's like a circulatory system for the nation's most populous city, moving people from all walks of life quickly from place to place. With 36 lines, 472 stations, 248 miles of track, and 2.3 billion rides in 2025, it's no wonder that the New York subway is not just America's best metro, it's among the world's greats. My personal favorite line is the 7, which runs elevated through Queens past plenty of diaspora neighborhoods with great food options. I've also attempted to speedrun the system's shuttle trains with Toby Pannone, and I'll take any excuse to ride an express train, blowing past other trains and stations on the system's unusual quad-track alignments. When you time it right, you can also ride vintage equipment on the New York subway, such as the popular holiday nostalgia train. The New York subway is an elite system, in a world of its own, and a great network not just on the national stage, but the world's. For that, it gets this video's one and only S tier. Despite growing up near Philly, I only got around to riding the SEPTA subway system in 2019 during a summer day trip. I didn't ride it again until I started making Classy Wheel videos, but then I moved to Philly, and for a year, I used it at least once a week for school, errands, church, and the like. SEPTA as a whole is a big multimodal system, but it only has 3 lines that I would consider metros, and one of them is quite unconventional. This network is basically 2 conventional metro lines in a massive city that could benefit from a lot more, and for that it's going to get this video's first B tier. PATH, Port Authority Trans-Hudson, first opened in 1908 as an electric rapid transit system whisking passengers between New York and New Jersey through tunnels under the Hudson River. Since then, that's basically all it's been doing. It exists independently of both the New York City subway and New Jersey Transit, despite connecting both systems, and it doesn't extend very far anywhere. Since it's a small system that does what it does well, but it's still a small system, PATH is going to get this video's first C tier. PATCO is similar to PATH, a small metro system that crosses a river from New Jersey into a nearby city, in this case, Philadelphia. Consisting of just one line, 14.2 miles of track, and 14 stations, PATCO is an amalgamation of an older Philadelphia subway service, complete with a dramatic crossing of the Ben Franklin Bridge, with a repurposed heavy rail right-of-way after the city of Camden, New Jersey, with a lot of park and rides. I rode it for the first time in 2021 just for fun, and while I never had a practical reason to use it the entire time I lived in Philadelphia, it's been a favorite to revisit for Classy Wheel videos, including a future one that these shots are from. Great little system. C tier. For a city of its size, it may come as some surprise that Los Angeles only has 2 metro lines, and they make up less than half of the city's rapid transit system, which is mostly light rail. The city's B and D lines are entirely underground, together consisting of just 21.3 miles of track, although that's rapidly expanding, starting with a 3-stop extension of the D line this spring. From its opening in 1993, the LA subway system has been up against a lot, and expansion has been slow. But for the small area of LA it serves, it connects a fair bit, from Hollywood to downtown to Little Ethiopia. I rode it for the first time during my rail pass adventure, and while it seemed a little run down, it was perfectly functional. I would say this little system gets enough done to merit a C tier. Since it's actively being expanded, I'm going to reserve a spot for it in the B tier once the D line is completed. In 1983, the city of Baltimore, Maryland opened the first line of what they hoped would be a multi-line subway system. To this day, that now 15.5-mile route is the system's only line. The Baltimore Metro subway link is a bit of a joke in the transit world, and not just for its long name. Its stations were built to serve much higher volumes of people than the 4.6 million it moved in 2025. The fare system is a bit dysfunctional. The older budge trains are dirty and falling apart. Frequencies can be frustratingly low, and to top it all off, outside the downtown corridor, the Metro subway link doesn't really go that many places. And it's been criticized for putting right-of-way where it was easiest to build instead of where it was most useful. I first rode this system with Miles in Transit in 2022 after visiting the Baltimore Streetcar Museum, and it definitely lived up to the lack of hype. Dedicated video to come, but for now, D tier. First opened in 1972, BART redefined what an American metro could be. It now has 131.4 miles of track and 50 stations, sprawling out across the San Francisco Bay Area, with plans to grow further. BART isn't your typical metro. Stop spacing is wide, and it's not entirely useful for local trips within San Francisco or Oakland, but that's not its purpose. BART, as many have put it, is a regional rail system, and at that, it excels. I've used it to get from park and rides into San Francisco multiple times since 2022, and have really appreciated the frequency of trains on a service of this scale, especially compared to something like SEPTA's regional rail. You're also allowed to actually walk between cars, unlike on most US metros. For all its innovation and power, BART gets this video's last A tier. And now we go to a very different metro system. The 19-mile Cleveland RTA Red Line was opened in 1955, and it's strange. Trains are usually only 2 cars, sometimes 3, and sometimes 1, use overhead power, barely go downtown, and share tracks with light rail trains for 3 stops. It's a vestige of when Cleveland was a much bigger city. Still, it was also the first US metro system to offer service to an airport. I rode this line with Miles in Transit in late 2022, after we visited the least used Amtrak station in Ohio, and we both found it very odd. Like Baltimore's Metro, I definitely got the sense that they put down tracks where it was easiest, and I never felt like we were traveling through particularly dense or high-demand areas outside of downtown, a few nearby neighborhoods, and the airport. The Red Line is also the only metro on this list with an expiration date. Cleveland is currently in the process of replacing their entire rolling stock fleet with light rail, making the Red Line probably the first US metro system to become that mode. More endearing from its uniqueness than its usefulness, the RTA Red Line gets D tier. I had very limited experience with Florida's only metro during a day trip to the state in 2024, as a man likely on substances accosted me immediately after I got on board the train, and my traveling companion and I didn't feel like dealing with that. I'm not going to base my ranking of the metro off of that experience, but I will base it on the fact that Florida's largest urban area only has 24.4 miles of metro, consisting of basically one elevated line with a one-stop branch to the airport. That airport connection alone makes this 1984-era system better than its twin in Baltimore. But when you have a metro whose traffic comes in no small part from getting people from their commuter trains to downtown Miami, only to drop them off at the edge of downtown for another system to distribute them into the city, it makes sense why the Miami Metro gets C tier. The Staten Island Railway is New York City's other subway. Running across Staten Island, the only borough not connected to the New York City subway, and with only ferry and bus connections to anywhere else, the Staten Island Railway blurs the distinction between commuter rail and metro, with subway-like equipment running on 30-minute frequencies outside of rush hour. This 14-mile system first opened in 1860 under steam power, and today links the populous east side of the Forgotten Borough with many interesting communities along its way. I visited the Staten Island Railway in late 2024 with Avery the Cuban American, and I found it an altogether pleasant experience, a useful metro in a quieter part of New York City. C tier. I'm going to get some hate for this one, but I fully believe that the Detroit People Mover should count as a metro. After all, it uses the exact same technology as the Vancouver SkyTrain, which everyone agrees is a metro. But that doesn't make it a very good one. Consisting of a 2.94-mile elevated loop of track running in one direction only through downtown Detroit, this automated system was the only vestige of a much larger urban rail system to actually be built. I rode it in 2025 when it came out to document the end of the Transit Windsor tunnel bus, and I found it a pleasant experience, with interesting stations and plenty of ridership from a car convention going on that weekend. But I also get the sense that the People Mover works much better for leisure travel than for commuters, which is something that its operator seems fully aware of, leaning into tourist traffic through its pamphlets and advertising. I feel really bad for saying this, but the Detroit People Mover gets a D tier. Atlanta's MARTA Rail was opened in 1979, and I got to ride it on a day trip in 2025 thanks to my Frontier Airlines Go Wild Pass. Where MARTA Rail actually goes, it goes all in, with big trains, magnificent stations, and high speeds between them. I consider it the last great American metro, that is, the last metro system with more than one trunk line opened in the United States. But with many populous areas around Atlanta unwilling to see metro extensions, and no operating budget from the state of Georgia, MARTA Rail hasn't reached the heights of other 1970s metros, that is, BART and the Washington Metro. At least it's leapfrogging them with some of the coolest looking train sets on this continent, whenever those go into service. Remarkable and haunted by what could have been, MARTA Rail gets B tier. Tren Urbano serves San Juan, the capital of Puerto Rico, and this 10.7-mile system was the first US metro system to open in the 21st century, coming online in late 2004. I had the privilege of day tripping to ride it earlier this year. Tren Urbano runs between San Juan and two of its neighboring municipalities, linking major residential and commercial centers. It was intentionally built to serve high-traffic areas where it could, but it's also phase one of a project that was never completed. Trains barely enter San Juan's urban core, and don't come close to the airport or major tourism hotspots, and extension plans are basically dead, with authorities now eyeing bus rapid transit to connect the system to the rest of the city. Despite being a good metro, Tren Urbano is still an unfinished one. Regrettably, that earns it a D tier. And now we finally come to our last American metro in Honolulu, Hawaii. The Skyline, known locally as the Rail, is America's newest metro, opening in 2023. And it features cutting-edge features such as automated operation and platform screen doors. It has also faced severe project delays and cost overruns, and as of right now, they're still working on the section into downtown Honolulu. Skyline does serve the Honolulu Airport, Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam, two universities, and Honolulu's denser suburbs, as well as a low-density greenfield area to the west that's ripe for transit-oriented development. Each extension thus far has led to higher ridership. Unfortunately, and with apologies to my Hawaiian hosts in last week's video, I'm going to have to place Hawaii's metro system as it is right now in the D tier. But I'm also reserving it a place in the C tier for when the current trackage to downtown Honolulu is completed. Overall, the New York City subway is clearly the best metro system in the United States, and the Washington Metro is my favorite for nostalgia's sake. If we're counting the Detroit People Mover as a metro, it's probably the worst, since it only hauls 3,000 daily riders and is borderline useless except for very specific trips. As far as the second worst, and my personal least favorite system, I'm going to have to go with the Baltimore Metro subway link. It's dirty, it's overbuilt, it barely goes anywhere useful, and it has lower ridership than Tren Urbano. While our island metros are pretty low performers compared to the mainland, I feel Trent Urbano's extant segments were better designed than Baltimore's overall, and Skyline is still in the growing stage, so it'll get better with age. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching, and happy 250th birthday to the US of A. How are you celebrating this weekend? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you all next week.